Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. For today's video, we're discussing the sequel to the Scream movie, Scream 2, coming out 1 year later, so let's get into it here. So now with Scream 2 coming out, it literally comes out a year later, and honestly, for one of the sequels to the Scream movie, I think this really holds up. I really enjoyed this sequel, I'm just going to say that right now. I feel like they did a really great job with like building up to the original idea and everything in between. So with Scream 2, once again, the opening sequence here, you've got the opening kill. You have this couple waiting in the movie theater to go see the movie Stab, which is basically based on a book written by Gale Weathers, based on the events that happened in Scream 1. So a movie within a movie, if you will. And so you've got this couple, they're going in, and the atmosphere and the crowd and everything inside this movie theater, I really enjoyed that aspect there. Just even like the opening sequences in the Stab movie too, when you've got the girl taking off her robe and you just see like her ankles and her feet and the whole crowd cheering, to then the phone call that she receives for her to put the robe back on and everyone booing that. I really enjoyed that atmosphere in that movie theater. And so then you've got this the guy going to the bathroom and you see people dressed up as Ghostface. You see these two, Ghostface at the urinal. He goes into like one of the cubicles, and his kill where he puts his face against like the cubicle, that in itself is just disgusting, because you don't know what the hell has gone on inside that cubicle and the germs and the bacteria. Like, that's another whole story there. But just like the way he puts his face in, and just Ghostface, just like his tactical awareness to be able to like ping that knife through that cubicle to get it into his ear. High props to Ghostface for that. Gets him right in the ear, stabs him right in the face, to then go on and put his jacket on and go sit down next to his girlfriend, and Ghostface then going to proceed and stabbing his girlfriend, and her climbing up the stairs, goes in front of the crowd and just dies right in front of the crowd. I really love this opening sequence. Like, the opening kills or opening sequences to the Scream movies are really setting the tone for the actual movie, and this once again was a brilliant opening sequence. So after the title cards, after the opening sequences, we then get introduced to our characters here. We get to see what Sidney Prescott's been up to. We see her now at this college, Windsor College, with her best friend Haley. We also get to see Randy, who's like talking movies here. He's in this environment, in this class where they're just talking about movies, which just seems like such a fun class. They're talking about sequels to basically the movie, when they're discussing the Ghostface killer, basically recreating Stab sequel, and also just talking about movie sequels in general too.
Sequels suck. No, wow. Come on, man. Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
It's bullshit generalization. Many sequels have surpassed their original.
Oh, yeah?
Name one.
Yeah.
T2.
You've got a hard on for Cameron.
Big one.
The Godfather, Part 2.
I'm going to say this now. Both those sequels, Terminator 2, better than the original. My opinion there. And Godfather 2 are also a brilliant sequel too. However, there are other instances where the sequels do suck and aren't as good as the original, but those two that they gave out are two brilliant sequels there, but whole nother topic there. We then get introduced to the other characters, basically the Stu, Billy of this movie. So you get introduced to Sid's boyfriend Derek, and then his best friend Mickey. We then go to see these news outlets around the college there, wanting to interview people, wanting to interview Sidney Prescott. You get to introduce to this character called Debbie Salt, which we'll be discussing later on in this movie, because once again, this is spoiler review, her being Billy Loomis's mother, so that reveal will be introduced in the third act. But then you also get to see Dewey coming back, and you see Dewey wanting to offer protection to Sidney, and then you get to see Gale Weathers coming back too as well, obviously wanting to report the news. What I really like too is the relationship dynamic. I didn't discuss this in the first original movie, but the dynamic between Gale Weathers and Dewey's character, and just their relationship blossoming and developing more throughout the franchise, and especially throughout this movie, I really like too, especially when you see Dewey standing up for himself, especially what she wrote about him in her book. And then you also see her trying to stage a confrontation with Cotton Weary, the accused killer, in the first movie, trying to stage that interaction and confrontation between Sidney and Cotton Weary, only for once again Sidney to like hit Gale in the face again. So then as the movie's progressing here, you get to see this party going on where Sidney and Haley are attending this party, but on another house, another sorority house, you've got this character named Cece. She's left alone in the house. She basically gets this phone call from Ghostface. One of her friends or sorority sisters or whatever you want to call them comes into the house, and that's where you get to see a brilliant sequence of Ghostface running in the background hiding, and then having that conversation with Ghostface, to then having that chase sequence where he's running after her, stabs her, throws her over the balcony and killing her, causing the other party at the other end to basically close down because of this murder. And that's when you get to see Ghostface having that phone call with Sidney Prescott. And he then goes to try and attack Sidney Prescott, leaving her boyfriend Derek outside of the door, trying to help her, feeling helpless. Dewey arrives. That's when Derek comes in. Ghostface ends up stabbing Derek in his arms and escaping, which then leads to just a brilliant scene of this camera panning towards Sidney's face, her having this fear that this is happening again, and also having this suspicious now of Derek, who could possibly be another Billy Loomis situation repeating itself, and just that brilliant camera angle that they do of that. I really like that sequence there. And so then people are now starting to suspect Derek because of the history from the previous movie, thinking that he's going to put himself in danger and just going to the extreme lengths there. So now that Sidney has experienced this and sees this, she's backing off a little bit, putting her guard up. So Derek does what any normal person would do, sings to her in a large cafeteria in front of a crowd, sings and dances to her. I mean, I'm all for true love, but I'll be honest, I would not be able to sing like that in public, dance like that in public to prove myself, but good on Derek for him. And he gives her this necklace, which is representing his house or his crew. I don't know what to call them. I grew up in the UK. We didn't have this kind of stuff in the UK, so for me, I never experienced that. So I don't know what you call them. Like the house, I'm thinking of Harry Potter, so the houses or the group, the crew, like he gives the necklace that represents that. And so in the next sequence here, you've got another scene where you've got Randy now explaining the rules of a sequel. You get to see him explain what to expect from a sequel.
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy.
You have that sequence there, then you have them in this campus. You've got Gale, Randy and Dewey sitting in the campus in broad daylight, to then receiving that call from Ghostface. Now this sequence, I'm just going to say it right now, broke my heart. There's 2 scenes in this movie franchise so far that has absolutely broke me. You've got this scene now and a scene in Scream 5. If you haven't seen Scream 5 just yet, I won't spoil it for now. But in terms of this sequence here, so you've got them splitting up. So you've got Gale and Dewey running around, checking people's phones, seeing who is on a phone and seeing if it's Ghostface. You've got Randy also looking for Ghostface too, and then makes that mistake of mentioning Billy Loomis and just putting Billy Loomis's name in the dirt, which then comes back to haunt him because you see him getting pulled into the Gale Weathers' van and just getting killed off. And Randy was one of my favorite characters, and I hate that they killed him off. He was such an iconic character in this movie. Him and Stu together, I love the duo of them. So then Stu dies in the first movie, Randy's dying in this one. Just goes to show that these characters returning aren't safe, which is what I love about this franchise in this movie. But they killing Randy just broke my heart, man. Like, I love Randy in this movie and in the first movie too. Now, so because Randy died in Gale Weathers' van, the new cameraman, which I forgot to mention, Joel, he then quits because he doesn't want to be in any part of this whatsoever. So Gale and Dewey then go use the camera footage that Joel has picked up to try and see if they can spot Ghostface. And so by going through the tapes, that's when their relationship really starts to blossom. They really start to develop their interactions and their relationship with one another. They end up start kissing, and that's when Ghostface appears at this in this auditorium inside the college here. And for me, this is one of the best chase sequences in this movie and in the franchise in itself, because they're in like this auditorium. He's chasing Gale Weathers. They go through like this audio booth, music booth, studio area there where you've just got Gale trying to escape, going through like these narrow corridors, going through these soundproof rooms, having this sequence where Gale is in this room, she like ends up locking the door, and Ghostface throwing items, chairs and that kind of stuff onto this window, but nothing's doing it. And then because the room is soundproof, basically she can't hear anything from the outside, leading to what honestly gave me a heart attack when I first saw this, basically, was Dewey basically being stabbed in the back, thinking that you've just killed Randy, you're about to kill Dewey. But the heartbreaking part is that Gale has literally got her back turned towards it, so she doesn't have any idea until Dewey makes a sound using one of those mic thingies, I believe it was, to then her just witnessing Dewey potentially dying in front of her eyes, only for then Ghostface to disappear and Cotton Weary to come out with blood on his hands, making him the prime suspect here. So she runs out of campus to call the police. And so meanwhile, while all this is going on, you've got Sidney and her best friend Haley being escorted by the police in a police car, going into police custody protection here, for then Ghostface to then just appear out of nowhere and just to run up on them, kill one of the police officers, have another police officer jump onto the police car while Ghostface is now driving, and it just turns into this complete video game sequence here. You've got Ghostface driving, the police officer hanging on the hood of the car, Gale and her best friend in the back seat, and just driving this back and forth. I thought was brilliant sequences, only for Ghostface to crash into the car, crash into these poles and stuff like that. And this officer just dying in such a brutal way, leading to one of my edge of the seat suspenseful sequence here. You've got the Ghostface knocked out basically in the driver's seat. You have Sidney and Haley trying to escape. They have to go from the back seat of the police car to the passenger seat to then climb across the front driver's seat to then escape through the window. And I've got to tell you, like, I was sweating buckets watching this sequence here, seeing that suspense, seeing them going past Ghostface, and me, I'm thinking just take off that mask right now. Instead though, they both escape, run, only for Sidney to then go back wanting to reveal and unmask Ghostface, for Ghostface to be out of that door so smoothly, so swiftly, so quietly, to then going around and killing Sidney's best friend basically, and him chasing after her, where she runs back to campus to find Derek, her boyfriend, tied to this cross that was done by the Hazing brothers because of him giving up that necklace earlier on, which I explained there. So then she's trying to untie Derek, her boyfriend, where Ghostface then shows up to reveal to be Mickey, Derek's best friend. And now that's when we get into like the third act here, and I'll be honest, it's not as great as like the third act in the first Scream movie, but this third act was still very highly enjoyable. And so basically after Mickey is revealed to be Ghostface, he tries to manipulate Sidney, basically telling her that Derek is also in on this, so the accomplice, the Stu and Billy Loomis duo, basically, to then shooting Derek. That made me a bit sad there. Like, Derek seemed like a very good guy, a very good boyfriend to Sidney too, only to be shot like that. And Mickey basically reveals his motive, basically saying that when he does go to court, he's going to be arrested. He suspects himself being arrested, to then using the whole violence in movies as his like basic defense, which I think is very unique and very interesting and pretty clever, especially at that time in the late 1990s. That is a pretty good solid alibi, or not alibi, but defense that you could use there. So I liked that motive. But that's when we get to see the accomplice, or the second Ghostface. So then I love this little like quick scene here where you've got Mickey saying that he's going to reveal his accomplice, his Ghostface, for Gale to come out, having that brief doubt that it's Gale as Ghostface, only to then have Debbie Salt come out, which then is revealed to be Billy Loomis's mother. And for me, it's a great shout out to Friday the 13th with the first one, having Jason Voorhees' mother being the killer in the first movie. So a great little like homage to that. For me, that's what I'm getting there. And for her, also great motive too. She wanting to get revenge on her son being murdered by Sidney Prescott, even though there is some little loopholes with her basically causing Billy Loomis to be a killer, as Sidney mentions and points out here, is because she left him. A little bit of flaws there, but obviously understandable because her husband cheated on her, and it's because of Sidney's mother, because of Sidney, that she lost her husband due to an affair and lost her son due to murder, basically. And then what I really enjoyed too is that this sequence is to, you've got the environment, you've got like they're in this stage production here where you've got these props going around, using it to the advantage, bricks falling over and all that kind of stuff coming out. So just a brilliant third act, brilliant back and forth between Sidney and Billy Loomis's mother here, Mrs. Loomis. And also too is that like you come to find out that Mickey and her met through like this online where there's this forum where people do want to do this kind of thing, which I think that's hilarious. And then she ends up shooting Mickey, also shooting Gail. So now you've just got Sidney versus her. And that's where Cotton Weary just appears out of nowhere. And she's convincing him to shoot Sidney. And what I love is that the way that Sidney convinces Cotton Weary to kill Mrs. Loomis was promising that interview with Diane Sawyer, because that's what he wanted and thought he was going to get with her. So because she promised that, he ended up shooting Billy Loomis' mother, Mrs. Loomis. And then once again, you get that iconic scene of Ghostface having one last burst of energy, one last scare. Mickey appearing out of nowhere, running to Sidney and Gail, only for them to start shooting him and killing him. And then that iconic shot in the head to Mrs. Loomis to just make sure that they're dead, because that's what you do in a horror movie franchise. You shoot them in the head. And so then we also come to find out that Dewey is alive. And this I really liked. I think that was a perfect like icing on the cake. Is that as Gail Weathers is about to like report the incident, she sees that Dewey's alive, drops everything to go to the hospital with Dewey. So just really like putting the icing on the cake, as I mentioned, that mark of like a great relationship with one another. Her caring more about Dewey than her career, I just thought was really nice. A really nice touch and a perfect character arc for her compared to like the first movie. And then you also get to see Sidney being interviewed by the media, only to pass on to the fame to Cotton Weary and asking the media to interview him, basically kickstarting his fame and career, because you see that in Scream 3, but I won't dive into too much of that. I will do that on the next video there, but that about wraps it up for Scream 2. A little bit of flaws here and there, but not too much, because I feel like this is a great sequel, given the fact that it was released a year later. I think these two are great movies with one another. I think that the sequel does hold up and does a fantastic job. My biggest nitpick and criticism is that they killed Randy in this movie. Other than that, though, a fun movie, a really great sequence, and so far, just a fun back-to-back movie with Scream 1 and 2. I had a fun time with this movie. I really enjoyed it, just like I enjoyed Scream 1. So please let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comment section down below. Your thoughts, your opinions on this movie. And so far, if you feel like this one's better than the original or the original's better than this one, please let me know down in the comment section below here. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos here on the channel. Once again, mentioning Scream 3, 4 and 5 will be coming out in the next couple of days, just in time for Scream 6, the movie. So hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on that. But I have got a Twitter also, link is in the description down below. Go ahead, follow me on that, so that way you don't miss out on any future videos whenever I do post. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is YK Reviews. Peace.